Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today we're looking at the fact that heroin was created by the makers of aspirin. And just before we get started with today's video, I do want to say that it is made possible by Cheddar. You might know Cheddar from their live news network or their product reviews on Facebook, but now they are making weekly YouTube videos. And if you like this channel, you are also going to like their videos. You can check them out through the link in the description below. Now, while opium itself has been commonly used since at least 3400 BC, heroin is a relatively new invention derived from opium. Heroin, more technically known as diacetylmorphine, was first synthesized in 1874 by chemist Charles Romley Alder Wright, working at St Mary's Hospital Medical School in London, England. He discovered the drug after playing around with mixing morphine with various acids. Specifically, he created it after boiling acetic anhydride with anhydrous morphine alkaloid for a few hours, which resulted in what we now commonly call heroin. After running a few experiments with it on animals, though, he abandoned his work on the drug. 23 years later, though, a man named Felix Hoffmann, working at Bayer in Germany, managed to independently synthesize heroin when he was trying to produce codeine. This new derivative of opium was found to be significantly more potent than morphine, and so Heinrich Dresser, head of the pharmacological laboratory at Bayer, decided they should move forward with it rather than another drug they had recently created, and that would be aspirin. It should be noted that Dresser was apparently well aware of Wright having synthesized heroin 23 years before. But despite this, he claimed heroin was an original Bayer product, and by early 1898 they began the animal testing phase of the product, testing it primarily on rabbits and frogs. They next moved on to testing it on people, primarily workers at Bayer, including Heinrich Dresser himself. After successful trials, heroin was presented to the Congress of German Naturalists and Physicians as more or less a miracle drug that was 10 times more effective than codeine as a cough medicine and worked even better than morphine as a painkiller. He also stated that it had no toxic side effects, including being completely non-addictive. Dresser particularly pushed heroin as the drug of choice for treating asthma, bronchitis, tuberculosis, and phthisis. Now, it might seem strange to you that he should be pushing heroin as a cough medicine over its pain-killing effects, but it should be noted that at the time, tuberculosis and pneumonia were some of the world's biggest killers. At the time, the leading method of treating these was codeine, which is fairly addictive given regular use. Because heroin worked well as a sedative and a respiration depressor, it did indeed work extremely well as a type of cough medicine and allowed people affected by debilitating coughs to finally be able to get some proper rest, free from coughing fits. Further, because it was marketed as non-addictive, unlike morphine or codeine, it was initially seen as a major medical breakthrough. Just 1 year after its release, heroin became a worldwide hit, despite it not actually being marketed directly to the public, but rather simply to physicians. Heroin was soon sold in a variety of forms, mixed in cough syrup, made into tablets, mixed in a glycerin solution as an elixir, and even put into water-soluble heroin salts, among other things. At the end of this first year, it was popularly sold in over 23 countries, with Bayer producing around 1 ton of it in that year. Now, obviously, it quickly became apparent that Bayer's claims of the drug not being addictive were completely false, with reports popping up within months of its widespread release. Despite this, it did continue to sell well in the medical field. Finally, in 1913, after the number of heroin addicts began to skyrocket and it became likely that it would shortly be banned in many countries, Bayer decided to stop producing the drug. Now, just before we get into the bonus facts section today, I'd love to tell you about Cheddar for just one moment. Now, previously, Cheddar were known for their live news, but now they're making weekly YouTube videos, and if you like the content on this channel, you are also going to love their stuff. I mean, related to this video, I particularly like to recommend one, and that's all about the opioid crisis in the United States. It's a really interesting watch, and I'm going to link to it in the description below. Now, if you go over, if you like that video, please do also subscribe to Cheddar, because they are putting out that weekly content. And if you like that recommendation, you'll also like their regular stuff. And let's get into the bonus facts. The originally trademarked name of heroin is thought to derive from the German word heroisch, meaning heroic. This is due to the way that the workers who tested heroin on themselves reported that it made them feel. Bayer ultimately lost the trademark for heroin in a few key markets. At the same time, they were forced to give up their trademark on aspirin thanks to World War I. During World War I, Bayer's assets, including their trademark rights in the US, UK, France, and Russia, were confiscated, and it became common to simply refer to all brands of the drug as aspirin in those countries. Finally, after the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, Bayer officially lost their trademarks on heroin and aspirin in the UK, France, Russia, and the United States. And now for another bonus fact. Interestingly, one of the common early uses of heroin was to help treat people who were addicted to morphine, even though heroin ultimately proved to be far more addictive. Humorously, when morphine was first isolated from opium in 1805, one of its early uses was as a non-addictive drug to treat people who were addicted to opium. And now for another bonus fact. Felix Hoffmann didn't just help introduce heroin to the world. In 1897, he was one of the first people to synthesize a version of something called salicylic acid. His version, though, didn't have the extreme negative stomach pain side effects normally associated with that particular chemical. His drug, acetylsalicylic acid, is more commonly known today as aspirin. And now for another bonus fact. Hoffmann was not technically the first to synthesize aspirin. That distinction goes to French chemist Charles Frederic Gerhardt, who did it in 1853. However, Gerhardt's methods resulted in an unstable and impure form of aspirin. Hoffmann's method had no such deficiencies, though others had also managed to achieve this feat before Hoffmann, resulting in numerous lawsuits being filed against Bayer over this after they introduced aspirin. And now for another bonus fact. The salicylic acid aspirin is derived from actually has been used for medicinal purposes for thousands of years. The chemical is naturally found in the bark of a willow tree. Indeed, Hippocrates himself, somewhere between 460 and 377 BC, described a powder from the willow tree that was used to treat symptoms such as headaches, various types of pain, fever, etc. And now for another bonus fact. When aspirin was first recommended to Joseph Bayer to move forward with, he rejected it, stating, "The product has no value." Today, over 40 billion tablets of aspirin are consumed annually. When heroin's star began to fall after people realized how addictive it was, he revisited his decision on aspirin, which quickly became Bayer's best-selling product. And now for another bonus fact. After Heinrich Dresser left Bayer, he is once again thought to have picked heroin over aspirin, this time to his doom when he eventually died of a stroke. It is rumored that in his waning years, he began taking heroin daily rather than aspirin to treat his health problems. What is ironic about all of this, of course, is that a daily dose of aspirin may well have prevented his stroke. And now for another bonus fact. Both morphine and codeine were isolated from opium in the same year, 1805, with morphine being reported to be about 10 times as potent as opium itself. As such, it quickly became one of the more popular medicinal and recreational drugs in many places of the world, particularly the United States, where it was used very commonly as a pain reliever. And now for another bonus fact. When heroin is orally ingested, its effects are drastically reduced due to the fact that it is converted to morphine when it is metabolized by your body. This may partially explain why the addictive effects of heroin were not instantly apparent, as is often the case with modern methods that junkies use to partake in this drug, which result in it being able to cross the blood-brain barrier extremely quickly. And now for another bonus fact. While heroin is outlawed in most countries of the world, it is still sometimes used in medicine in the UK for treating various things like post-caesarean section pain and other post-surgery pains. It is also used to help relieve pain in cancer patients and for others who have chronic pain. However, in recent years, this usage has begun to tail off in favor of other drugs such as morphine. Today, medicinal use of heroin in the UK accounts for an estimated 95% of the legal use of heroin in the world. And now for another bonus fact. Bayer was started by Friedrich Bayer and Johann Friedrich Westcott in 1863 as a chemical company making various paints rather than pharmaceuticals. Another major company today that started out making dyes and is now famous for making something completely different is Crayola. And now for another bonus fact. Aspirin is thought to have significantly contributed to the death toll in the 1918 flu epidemic due to the fact that high doses of aspirin can be toxic, and these high doses can lead to fluid buildup in the lungs, upping the chance of infection. And now for another bonus fact. Bayer had their legacy significantly tarnished during World War II when they became part of the Farben German chemical company conglomerate that is known to have used slave labor during World War II, including managing slave labor camps. Further, Farben is the group that manufactured Zyklon B. And why is this important? Well, that's because Zyklon B was the cyanide-based pesticide used in the Nazi gas chambers. After World War II, Bayer was forced to separate from Farben. And now for another bonus fact. One of Bayer's executive officers during World War II, Fritz Tamiya, who was the chairman of Bayer's supervisory board, was tried and convicted during the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal and sentenced to 7 years in prison. He reportedly was involved in numerous experiments done at Auschwitz on human subjects. Specifically, the charges he was convicted of were guilty of Count 2, plunder and spoliation, and Count 3, slavery and mass murder. And now for another bonus fact. Bayer currently grosses around $45 billion per year, with about $2 billion of that being profit. They also have well over 100,000 employees. So I really hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, do not forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, as I mentioned earlier, please do check out the Cheddar video I recommended about the opioid crisis. You can find a link to that over there on the right. It's a great watch, and do subscribe to Cheddar for brand new stuff from them as well every week. And as always, thank you for watching.